Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and it is now the 1st of August. We have made it to Lunasa and it's just kind of amazing to me that we're this far along in the year. I keep thinking of those Jimmy Kimmel things, and of course I guess Jimmy Kimmel's got guest hosts on all summer. And good morning Joanne, good morning Melissa. I was just talking about how it's Lunasa today, and I was just like, I feel like that those Jimmy Kimmel things where he's just kind of like, puts all the newscasters on going, whatever it is, the first of whatever month. Can you believe it? No, I can't believe it's the first of the month. So I kind of feel like that today. Like, I can't believe it's the 1st of August. But, it's going to be a hot one today. We'll see. Good morning. Lamas Lunasa, blessings to all. Yes, and to you as well. I was trying to determine this morning, like, what I'm going to do for Lunasa this evening, but I think I have that sorted out. The other big exciting thing I have on the agenda today is that I bought my car in 2019, I think, actually. So it was a 2020 car, so now it's finally come up for inspection. So I have to bring it up to the inspection station. It's just 9 minutes away from here and have them. I mean, I was always taking it in and having it done, but I'm realizing I could have just gone right up here. I mean, I didn't have to pay somebody. I mean, I guess if the car needed work, but this car shouldn't need any work. So hopefully it just goes smoothly this morning, and then I can because then what'll happen is, what I don't want is when I do have to be driving around, because I'm going into the city next week. Well, I'm not driving into the city, but I'm going to get to the train and do all this stuff. I don't need, the cops all go out and they look for people with their inspections things, and then they play, I just want to remind you that you got to get this done by the end of the month. Like, I don't want to deal with that. So I'm just going to get, it's an August date on my car. We're just going to get it done the 1st of August. So, so that's kind of how I'm starting my day today. Let's see. So this week has been, it's been interesting. I've actually, like I said, there's quite a bit of stuff that has come in this week. I have a ritual tonight and restarting inside the sacred circle tonight at 8. Yes, that's right. Because I saw the invitation from Jim for that. That yes, you've got your Joanne's podcast, Inside the Sacred Circle, is going to be on tonight at 8. And exactly. I know. And then trying to work all that stuff around. I think when I was on your podcast, it was like around the summer solstice. So it just kind of seems to be these Wheel of the Year events. My international women's group is in break. Oh, okay. I got it. Okay. Well, today I've got my marching orders in terms of what to do for Lunasa. But yes, it was awesome. Oh, cool. That's awesome. That is awesome. So today, when I got up again. It was kind of, it's interesting. It was a period of time where I was sleeping really, really badly, and now I seem to sleep much better. But I woke up this morning. I haven't been dreaming a whole lot, which is kind of funny because I have a dream workshop coming up on Saturday. And I think I have 3 and probably a 4th person who's going to register for it at this point. So we'll see how that goes. But I've been, it's funny, I haven't dreamt a lot in the last, like, there were days when I was just dreaming, and now it's like, it seems to have slowed down a bit. Or maybe it's just what my sleep patterns have been. But the topic that came up for me, and it's probably, again, this may be another retrograde topic that's come up, has a lot to do with relationship. Because one of the things I've certainly noticed in the political sphere, and again, this is not to get into anybody's individual politics about anything, about who they support, who they don't support, and that kind of thing. But I have noticed that since Kamala Harris has come on the scene, and I'm listening, and I see different things. Again, I don't really go out of my way to look for this stuff. It's just like if it shows up in my feed. Like there was apparently this really contentious interview with Donald Trump last night with the Black Journalists Association. Like it did not go well. But the thing is, when they talk about Kamala. In fact, the podcast that I'm doing over on Katonia this week is going to be on Jezebel, because I saw her referred to several times as a Jezebel. And just as someone interested in the dark feminine stuff, I'm always interested to see what happens, because the pattern seems to be a woman who is independent, a woman who might be strong, who might speak up for herself, is often viewed when it's in this kind of a context, in a large social context, she's viewed as being, like immediately the first, what were they saying? First of all, they were saying the DEI stuff, which, is really ridiculous. But the first thing they're attacking is basically like, oh, well, you were just like a racial diversity hire. Like that was the first kind of thing they were saying. But then it was all about how she slept her way into certain positions. And which of course is also not true. But what I find terribly interesting about that is the way in which the feminine becomes, like when you have an independent feminine, like I've often talked about kind of the virgin whore axis. They are that, like either you're the good submissive virgin, or, and I'm saying this is just speaking archetypally. This is not necessarily speaking about individuals. But immediately, she's someone on that end of the axis. She's that, she used seductive charm to get to where she was. You know what I mean? I just think it's fascinating how that narrative just kind of automatically plays out. Like that's the default narrative that people go to. You always know what people's default narratives are when they're upset about something. When they're angry at you for something. What are the first insults that they try to call you? It says something about how that person perceives the way that you are, either as a woman or it could be for men too. But particularly as a woman, it's just like or all this stuff around the childless cat ladies who are running our country, and I'm like, well, it's just there's a lot of talk around this, and I just find it really interesting the narrative around women and what it's been looking like here. It's a double standard. Why is it okay for men to use sex as a tool and not women? So it's so dumb. Well, strictly speaking, from an egalitarian standpoint, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, I think is the way that they say it. In experience, I've never found that to be the case. I have been in relationships with people, this has been a long time ago now, but where that person, like if I had male friends who I hung out with, it was like, that was just totally not acceptable. But every time this person would like go to conferences and places, I would always see the pictures of them like hitting on all these other women. And I was like, look, if you don't want to be in a serious relationship, that's fine. But, don't give me this thing of, basically it was, I want you to be committed to this relationship, but I don't have to be. I've seen that dynamic a lot. Now, again, that's just one anecdotal thing. But it does seem to be a thing that what's okay for one is not okay for the other, and that the woman is the one who's kind of the one who shouldn't be, is the one who should be committed to the situation. So it's just, and again, it's an interesting expectation, because you sometimes even see it in people who you wouldn't think would think that way. You would think they'd be a little bit more enlightened or maybe a little egalitarian about it. But in any case, it does kind of bring me to the topic today, which has to do with, and it is kind of the core of a lot of what I talk about, and it has to do with the way in which, particularly, in which we engage with the soul, okay? Now, this is from an archetypal standpoint, the way we deal with masculinity and femininity, and how it affects the way that we manage everything else, how we manage transitions, how we manage other stuff. It's why it's so important to me, because it seems to me that is the dynamic. First of all, I feel like it's the dynamic that is being brought forward just collectively. You will hear a lot of people talk about the way in which the divine feminine is trying to come into the new paradigm, whether you're talking about it astrologically, whether you're talking about it in other ways. Okay, you've got this strong feminine that's coming in. And again, people are talking about the dark feminine coming in. And again, to me, that's a lot of the femininity. First of all, the variety that patriarchal culture doesn't care for, the variety that says, not that, again, it doesn't have to be anti-relationships with men, but it was, as one of my friends once said about his own wife, he said, well, it's not that I need her, but it's that I want to be with her. I prefer to be with her, like you're together because you prefer to be with each other, not because one of you needs the other one to exist, going either way, So that's kind of this, the way in which those aspects, we don't know really quite how to balance those aspects out. The book Virus of the Mind talks about these memes, not social media memes, are programmed through evolution. Could be. I think, I mean, certainly, they certainly seem to be something that is embedded in the culture, whether we're talking about it, evolutionarily or not. I always feel like there's kind of a justification that there's kind of made for that I don't know. Certainly it's a behavior that is not like something that we can just say, oh, well, I'm going to think differently about men or think differently about women and it's going to go away. I mean, that's for sure. It's not something superficial, certainly. But the thing that I was going to talk about, what came up for me, okay, and this is going to seem like it's not totally off, really. Something came up in one of my feeds, I think it was while I was uploading some videos, about Patty Boyd. Okay, now Patty Boyd, probably people on here know who she is. But if you don't, she was the wife of both George Harrison and Eric Clapton. Okay, and she was the inspiration for a couple really famous songs. So she's the inspiration for Beatles song Something, George Harrison's song Something, which is a really, really, really pretty love song. But she's also the inspiration of Eric Clapton's Layla, right? And Layla and other love songs, he was absolutely obsessed with her. And actually, when you see Patty Boyd, I mean, when you look at the pictures of her from then, I mean, even now, she's 80 years old and she still looks great for somebody who's 80. But she finally put her memoir out and she talks about these relationships and how she met these guys. And I mean, apparently when she met George Harrison, like he came up to her, like the first day he met her and asked if she would marry him. And she's like, she was like in a relationship with somebody at that point. She was like, yeah, that's great. But of course she broke it off with that person. Then when she didn't think she was going to see George Harrison again. But then when she did, he's like, oh, so how's the boyfriend? And she was like, well, we're not together anymore. And so then they got into this whirlwind romance and they got married, right? And then later on when she met Clapton like was totally, and she was gorgeous. I mean, she was absolutely gorgeous, blonde, petite, she had the big eyes. I mean, she was just a really attractive woman. And archetypally, in this case, what Patty Boyd kind of becomes is she's like an anima figure. She's a muse, okay? And she's a muse for both Harrison and for Clapton. Okay, she's a figure. It's almost like she becomes an embodiment of the archetype, which is what happens when people fall in love a lot of the time. She is the one who inspires you. And the woman that they long for, that's my goal. I have to have that. Now people do go through that, and I feel like over the years, like if we want to talk about the way men and women have conceived this, and again, I feel like moving into the 21st century, that Gen Z and the others are thinking about this. That's why I'm saying I'm not always sure. I mean, if it's evolutionary, it could be that maybe there's an evolutionary shift going on. But certainly you're seeing Gen Z sort of thinking about this whole construct differently. If I talk to students about this construct, some of them just kind of look at me like it's odd. But although I don't think it's totally gone away. What it is the idea that, especially for women, okay, and again, you can go back and look at old commercials from like the 60s, the 70s, even the 50s. You see the way in which things are marketed to people, you kind of see the way in which that social attitude is, what was expected. And a lot of times, like I think about the commercials I watched growing up, and then if I go back and watch, like just for fun, if I just go back on, they have the 70s commercials or whatever, and I watch it and I'm going, whoa, like the messaging there. I mean, that messaging would not happen today. Because there's definitely the expectation. First of all, there's the messaging that you as a woman, good morning, Sam. The messaging, we're just talking about messaging in women. I was talking about Patty Boyd and her marriage to Clapton and Harrison and how they were, how she was like a muse for the two of them, okay? And what ends up happening here is that the woman, first of all, the messaging that we got was that, especially once I reached my teen years, was just kind of that your whole thing is to be attractive to men, okay? Of course, you're not supposed to have sex with men, but you are supposed to be attractive to them. And that is what judges your value, how hot people think you are, okay? Now, mind you, I'm not advocating, but this was the messaging. And also, that as a woman, what was going to happen was you were going to get married and have a family. Like you could go to college, university, whatever, but you were going to get that was really what you were going to do. You were going to get married and you were going to start a family because that's what you did. And all the messaging is kind of around that. And of course, you had to be attractive enough to attract somebody so that by the time you got out of high school, you could have a husband, right? And nowadays we look at that and we're like, oh, no, you wouldn't do that. But at that time, that was a lot of the messaging. So I think it kind of added a social layer to women already. When you enter, when you start having those hormonal shifts and you enter that period of time where you may become interested in whomever you're going to be interested in, by the way. I mean, it's not a foregone conclusion that men are interested in women and women are interested in men. And, it's not, and people may say now, but I'm like, really, it's never been a foregone conclusion. It's just that previously people were expected to hide it if it was anything other than a male-female matchup. Okay. So it's, so you have this idea of the anima. Now, what I found really, just to go back to Patty Boyd, what I found really interesting about her story is that she was married, George Harrison was in love with her, he married her, and she dealt with infidelity with him. And she also dealt, like, when he got more into the Eastern religious stuff, like, she felt like he was detached from her, like he couldn't care less about her or about her beauty. And the thing is, she had always been defined by that. Like, that was how she was defined socially. That was how she came into society, is like, you're that beautiful woman that men stare at. And there's women today. I mean, and we all kind of do that, right? We're all just kind of like, oh, I got to get the body tucks. I got to look like this. I got to be this weight. I got to dress this way. I got to do my hair this way. We all have these things that we do. And that, of course, as I've said, is the influence of the animus, at least from a Jungian perspective. That's the influence of the animus, saying, are you good enough to meet that group standard? Because the animus tends to function as an archetype. It's almost like a group of men rather than just a single man. Now there could be somebody. I've talked about animus projections and the men who you look at and say, yeah, that for whatever reason, whatever attracts you when you see something and you go, wow, that's what's stirring your soul. That's what's stirring the soul archetype. And the male and female soul archetypes only start with the mother-father archetypes, because that's what you first experience as, whatever sex, gender you're born into, whatever your parental images are that are masculine and feminine, those are going to match up with the mother and father archetypes. And I say it that way because in theory it should be your biological parents, but it isn't always for some people. The book talks about things like this. But here's the thing. It's archetypally speaking, when you have these male-female images, and this is where Freud got into the whole thing with the Oedipal complex and stuff like that. And also they would talk about the female Electra complex. That was the other one that they would talk about. The kind of attachment to mother or father in a way that, while not apparently sexualized, as he would say, it was kind of unconsciously sexualized. And again, it's not that it ends up coming across as like, oh, people want to go and kids really want to have sex with their parents. Like, no, they don't. It's not that. It's more that is the basis of what their understanding is. Because think about it, a lot of people will say, like, when people get married, their spouses may in some way bear a resemblance to the parent. Because the parent might be their ideal of what masculine, like, okay, if I married a man who was a lot like my father, it has nothing to do with any kind of sexual feelings towards my father. It would have just had to do with the personality he displayed, like the thing that I saw as like what masculinity should represent in a good way. And of course, if people had negative parental relationships, they're going to seek something that's the opposite or something that's different. So you're seeking it in terms of that. Now, the thing is, with this kind of archetypal kind of relationship, what shifts is when you reach that hormonal threshold, when you cross into that threshold, that what I call the Persephone threshold there, when you move in from girlhood to womanhood, then the understanding of masculine and feminine shifts, and that's when the soul archetype kind of kicks in. And the female soul archetype is always, it's got different components to it. So on the one hand, we see these things, and again, that's what Cattonia talks about. We talk about the Yeats talked about the Len and she. I don't know that the Len and she was really an ancient thing, but it was the idea of the fairy woman who appeared and that the poet desperately was in love with and was my inspiration for all their great poetry, but caused them to waste away. You know, the idea of the woman that you pine for. And the way, and again, speaking from a Jungian perspective, you find that you're going, that when you're in love with somebody like that, it's the archetype is completely projected onto them, and the thing is, you can't differentiate the person from the archetype. Often a person ends up carrying the archetype, and so therefore they are put on a pedestal, and they're kind of carrying the weight of what because you'll often hear people say, like, you don't really know who I am. You know, you say you love me, but you don't really know who I am. And that's exactly it. That's bearing the archetype. And but that's the understanding of it. And as we see from mythology, that in myth, we frequently have to in myth, a lot of mythology, especially mythology around these kinds of witchy figures, or like the Odyssey with Odysseus, and where he runs into Circe, or Circe, I think is how you would actually say it in Greek, when he runs into the sirens, when he runs into even probably Scylla and Charybdis to some degree, but also Calypso, the nymph. When he runs into all of these figures, they're representations of the feminine, and Circe, or Circe, is actually a really good example, because when he arrives on her island, she turns all of his men into pigs, right? And but then he has this thing. It's called the moly plant. Okay, you talk about holy moly. I mean, yeah, that's literally, it's a plant called the moly plant, and Hermes or Hermes or Mercury gives him this plant to ward off the spells of Circe, and so she can't put her spell on him. So then she changes tactic, and instead she seduces him and says, okay, I'll help you. So really what this means archetypally is the idea of this feminine influence that comes in and helps you. It's a feminine influence that comes in, and basically it can be the seductress. It can lure you in. It can make you take leave of your senses, can turn you into a pig, so to speak. Or if managed in a certain way, it can actually be a guiding principle for you. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of getting into correct relationship to the feminine. Now, what I found interesting about the Patty Boyd situation is that both Harrison and Clapton cheated on her. They cheated on her regularly. And that's what's interesting, because a lot of times women have this idea of, or you see it's the Cinderella narrative, right? The forever and ever. Oh, Prince Charming's going to come, and then it's just going to all be perfect forever and ever. And, so it's, and it's not. It's just not. Because that's not how it works. Once the projection is withdrawn, now if there's real love between two people, the projection, withdrawing the projection is not going to, withdrawing it is not going to, basically the relationship will continue, because you have somebody, my husband talks about this triangle all the time. Yeah, it's interesting. I have, I'm reading what Sam says, by the way. For people who are watching this later going, wait, what are you talking about? Yeah, she was just saying that her husband talks about this. Yeah, it's very much it's right. So there's the projection. There's the thing that you are. That's the way that you are in love with somebody when you see them. And then there can be a point at which, like, think about dating life when you're younger. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm just not in love with you anymore. Projection withdrawn. If you withdraw the projection and said, you know what, I still like, I see you as a real person, I like you as a real person, and you are the person who I prefer to be with. We're back to this again, right? That's coming into proper relationship with the feminine. It's not just about, are you this like sex goddess who meets some kind of celebrity standard? Because in a certain sense, I've also heard men tell me that even though they may admire the beauty of women like that, they would never want to be involved with somebody like that because they said, because it's almost like that person feels unattainable. It's like they're beyond what they are. I'm just some regular person, and there's like this goddess kind of image, right? Like it's something that's untouchable to me, or I'm going to be rejected because I'm not good enough. And that's why there's like a lot of this posturing about how men are supposed to be around women. It's just fascinating to me because a lot of times we have the idea, or we grew up with the idea, that once you got married, like that was it. That was your husband. They were faithful to you. I mean, that was like, sewn up, end of story. Cinderella, goes and lives in the palace with Prince Charming and they live happily ever after, right? Doesn't work like that because that's the fantasy view. And again, it doesn't mean that being in a relationship with somebody or being married to somebody has to be a bad thing. But when somebody still has those unconscious archetypal expectations of their partner, which nobody can live up to, I don't care. And that's kind of proof positive. When you have somebody who's that, boy, did I get a rude awakening, you were saying, yeah, I did too. I mean, yeah, I married a guy who had thought back in the 1994, who thought, the way he talked about me, he wrote poetry to me. He also was just like, oh my God, you're just this. And then when we got married, it's like, literally I was told, well, you're not doing enough to make me happy. Because to me, I'm like, okay, we're married. To me, marriage is like, okay, this is a relationship. Even at 22, I think I was when I was married. 20, was I 20? I was 20 at 94. Yeah, I was 22 when I got married. It was like, I'm like, okay, we have responsibilities. We have, we have to worry about having jobs and being able to take care of a place. And it was just almost like, I don't want to do any of that, and then, but archetypally, okay, when I talk to my students about this, when I teach Love Myth, you go back to being mom. That's where you go back. The other thing they identify with the feminine is mom. So once you're the wife, the only one they know in the wifely role, again, this isn't a totally unconscious thing, but it's mom. And it falls into the role of like whatever mom did for them, now you're supposed to do for them. You're not the anima anymore. And that's also why a lot of men will go off and start having the roving eye for other women. Yes, and mine had a whole other girlfriend 2 states away before internet. He was a Greenpeace activist. Oh, okay, so he was, yeah. Oh, and I got 2 crows right outside my window. That's kind of interesting. That's the thing. And it kind of falls into this thing because it's not that projection anymore, because they're completely and especially because with men, because I feel like they're not trained to acknowledge anything about emotion or about relationship. Like that's not the thing. Like men are have been culturally geared towards independence. Like you have to be independent, you have to stand on your feet, you gotta be strong, you gotta be a big guy, you gotta be support, you gotta be this, yeah. Like And again, that's not always a fair expectation on them either, but that is the way it is. So the idea of when women say like, well, I want to have a conversation about this, I want to come, they're just kind of like, what is this crap? Like, I don't want to hear about this. And you do find that happens. Now, again, does this have to be absolutely every relationship? No. Some people work around all of these kinds of obstacles and they get it right. And even again, acknowledging that some days are good and some days are bad. There's a working through it, but you're willing to work together. That's really what the key is. If someone goes into a marriage thinking it's going to be a Cinderella situation, and it's not just the women, the men too, they think like, oh, I've married you, and now, my husband told me that at one point. He had said to me, when we were about married for about 5 years, I was the problem for not supporting him without question. Yeah, exactly. We had a conversation. I remember I was walking with him, and it was when we were living in Stockton, I think. We were taking a walk, and I said to him, okay, I want to know why you married me. Because literally everything I did was wrong, mind you. I was the only person supporting us. He was unemployed at that point. He was not helping out with anything in the house. He was just sitting around. And maybe he was suffering from depression, but, he wasn't doing anything. I was suffering from severe anger at that point. And I said to him, why did you look at me and say, yeah, you're the person? And this is what he actually said to me. He said, well, you had your act together and I didn't. So I just figured you'd fix all my problems for me. And that's a direct quote. That's not me embellishing, making it up. I mean, I remember it because I was so flabbergasted by it. But you're the one who's going to fix it for me. I looked at him, I said, I got some bad news for you. I said, that ain't my job. Oh my God, yeah. I looked at him, I said, that ain't my job. And people wonder why all these years later I haven't gotten remarried. I said, because I'm always on the lookout for people who are kind of like, as soon as people start talking to me in a way that kind of suggests to me that, you're gonna be the wind beneath my wing. You're gonna, no, I'm not. I mean, it's not that I'm not willing to be in a relationship, be supportive, be that person, but I'm not going to come in, wave a magic wand, and solve all your personal problems. Nobody does that. Nobody does it. That's the archetype. And I remember Patty Boyd saying it was like when she married Eric Clapton, he was like, oh, this is like my lifetime wish come true. But you know what? They're divorced 10 years later. So it's like, it's not a guarantee of anything. And, and I feel like what happens in relationship bleeds out into society, and it bleeds out into life, because we don't know. We might not have learned anything other than that way of contending with the masculine and feminine. And so when we're working with things outside of that, or within a different paradigm, unreal, yes, same guy. And I was portrayed the bad guy by my mother and family and by him. Oh, yeah, I was too. I mean, I was a terrible person according to his family. But then again, he deliberately lied and portrayed me as a negative person. And he told me later on that he did. I think there was a time he had a collapsed lung. He had, and he was in the hospital. And mind you, I was working at a job where I only got like 6 days off a year. I was working corporate, and I was going after work every day, and he would scream at me because, this guy's wife took time off. I'm like, I don't have time off. I said, do you want to come home to a cardboard box? I mean, where are we going to live? Because you're not, we don't have money coming in. I need to work, and and then when we got home, he had to have certain painkillers. I had to go to the pharmacy to get certain painkillers, and he asked me if I would pick something up at the pizza place for him too, and I said fine. And that was about round trip. It was probably about 45 minutes because we lived out in the country, and so I went out and did those things. Now that night, I had a hair appointment that I'd already put off 3 times, and I said, well, I just need to go to get my color done. I said, do you want me to cancel it again? Are you going to be okay? He's like, no, you can go. But he was staying on the first floor, like the bathroom in the place was on the first floor. Like I just told him, I said, don't climb any stairs. You're on these kind of heavy drugs. Like just stay, he was just sitting on the sofa, like laying on the sofa watching, TV. He went and called his mother after I left and said that I had abandoned him. He called her up and said, she had the nerve because she needed her hair done. And I heard, and later on, all I heard was, and he says, you know what my mother said, what a rotten bitch you are. And I'm like, but that's a lie. He's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So yeah. I feel you, Joanne. But these are the reasons that I've said, and people wonder why do women want to be independent? I'm like, well, this is going to be our reading for today. I'm actually going to use the astrology card, so I don't need that many. Rage. Yeah. You threw him out on the street. Yeah, I actually, my ex, I think he went and moved back in with his parents. Now I think he owns a home. I think actually he is a Reiki therapist, actually. I think he does Reiki and massage and stuff like that. And we kind of talked and were friendly after that, although we haven't talked in over 10 years. And that's totally fine. I think the last time I communicated with him was when his father died. I did send flowers for the funeral, just as a gesture, because he was my father-in-law for a lot of years. We managed to have an amicable divorce, but it was, but point being is just that you talk about the problems between men and women. And when I start seeing these archetypes kind of repeated about women, oh, you're an independent woman. That means you want to be this, you want to be that, it's like, no, maybe I just want somebody who's going to treat me with some modicum of respect. Maybe I'd be happy to be in a relationship. But again, and a lot of men have said to me, oh, well, the fact that you have all these degrees, that's just too intimidating. I'm like, okay, like how fragile is your manhood? I mean, I don't know. It seems to be something, and I bring it up, and I know I brought it up on Katonia, but I just feel like maybe that's why this is a perennial question for me. I'm kind of like, why, what's the deal here? Like, that's why I think a lot of this healing and a lot of even our ability to move through transition has a lot to do with the way in which we're able to negotiate that in our relationships, with not only with with people with their spouses, but also with just other men around us and in the workplace, anywhere else, among friends, and also just in the collective and how women are being viewed in the collective, especially what we're seeing here in this country. So, okay, our cards for today. We're starting with the card Solar Eclipse, Revolution. Okay, so yeah, this is about shakeups and changes. I've seen quite a bit around this lately, that there's going to be a lot of unexpected stuff. And again, we've talked about retrograde and stuff like that. But it's, but we are, talking about, and it's, and its effects. But I feel like this is almost like one of the things that can happen. I mean, it can confuse things, but I feel like there's also is shaking things up, like a waking up to something, right? So we have Solar Eclipse as our first card, and we have it in the environment of the 10th house. Okay, so this is the card that has to do with, I mean, it's the 10th house, Capricorn energy, and so okay, so we're talking about Pluto retrograding into Capricorn right now. The shakeup, I think, is coming probably based on that retrograde. It's saying that, what we're examining what our legacy is, what we're doing, what our connection is to the community, what is our connection to the outside world, what is it that we feel our purpose is, or what it is that we need to do. And it's saying that the advice card, or the, what's going on, 4th house, the roots. It's rooted in the past. So it is rooted not only in tradition, but it's also rooted in perhaps the dynamics that we may have learned from family as well, about how things are supposed to be. And so then this becomes, in a way, it becomes what we feel our role or our purpose is, vis-a-vis what we've been told things need to be from the past, okay, where we need to go. And the outcome card, oh, and hello, JR, I see that you've just joined. The outcome card here is Sagittarius, okay? Sagittarius, I see. And Sagittarius is the card of independence and freedom, interestingly enough. Mercury got nothing on me. It's Chiron kicking my butt. Yeah, well, they did say, I actually did watch a thing on Mercury retrograde, and they did say it was not going to affect everybody. Yeah, freedom, exactly. Freedom, sovereignty. And also, Sagittarius is strong Jupiter energy. It's expanding your horizons. Thinking of the 9th house stuff. 9th house is spirituality. It's higher education. It's long distance travel. It's all of these things that have to do with expanding your boundaries, getting beyond the 4th house, getting beyond the family stuff, getting beyond the past and moving towards learning more, for yourself. Learning more for yourself, learning more for the sake of other people. My Cap Stellum with the sun is in the 9th house, and it's my favorite house. Yes, I'm trying to remember what I have. I feel like I've got, what have I got in the 9th house? I've got, Mercury's in my 10th, but I think this is in I feel like, what do I have? Neptune, is it the 6th or the 9th? I have something going on in the 9th, and I'm trying to remember what the heck it is. I know I have a planet there because I have a grand fire trine. And I feel like, although Sagittarius for me in my Western chart is 6th house. So, yeah, so it's kind of like in Aries is actually where my 9th house is. My 9th house is kind of Aries. And I know there's another supporting planet there, and I just can't think of it. You have to have some powerful stuff in the 9th house. Yeah, there is something. There is another planet there because, like I said, with the Grand Fire Trine, you're going to have a planet in each of the signs. Each of the fire signs. Just like if you had a Grand Earth Trine, it'd be a planet in each of the Earth signs, etc., right? That's what my mother has. My mother has a Grand Earth Trine. So, yeah, I mean, so I think this is a kind of a pretty clear indicator here. We're being shaken up because it's kind of like, what are you going to offer the world? And in order to offer the world, whatever you're going to offer it, you have to shake off the past. You have to shake off whatever family patterns are. You have to shake off, I mean, maybe to Joanne's point about the book she's reading, it may be some of this stuff that we have allowed to become hardwired into the culture to some degree. They're not things that are impossible to change. Not me flying blind. No birth time. Well, like I said, that's something that they can be reconciled or can be figured out. I have a cheat method of trying to figure out birth time, but I'm not always right. So generally, if somebody has a range of time, I can figure it out. But if you go to a Vedic astrologers do a reconciliation process, and they'll be able to take your life events and be able to figure out exactly what your birth time is. I've had it done for me, even though I pretty much knew my birth time. I think I was told it was like 8:45, and then they said, "Oh no," he said it's actually 8:48. So, because sometimes even when you have the time, like the clock could be off or whatever it is, but they do. There is a way of figuring it out. So anyway, wow. There's there's definitely kind of this impulse towards freedom here, and freedom to contribute what it is to do leave our own legacy, to do the thing that we have to do. Okay, that's the thing. We are here to leave a certain legacy, and we don't want to be tethered down. Like, remember that Eight of Cups card I showed from the Tarot Oscuro with the woman who's trying to fly away, and there's all of these tree roots from the ground that are like trying to pull her back down. Like, that's that version of the Eight of Cups. It's like, okay. And actually, there is something of the essence of the Eight of Cups there, because the Eight of Cups is something that is full and upright, but the seeker has outgrown it, right? I think that's how Arthur Edward Waite had talked about it in the original Rider-Waite book. He had said the cups are full and upright, but the seeker has outgrown them. So in other words, yeah, that's there. I mean, it's family, it's tradition, it's the background, it's the roots, it's everything that you've come from. But a lot of us, it's like we're not meant to stay in that place. You're meant to go beyond it. And similarly, when I think in terms of the whole thing I'm talking about with relationships, it's like, yeah, I mean, we don't want to just be a repeat of what our family was. Okay, you want to expand your horizons, learning new things. It's interesting the pattern of the cards that we've gotten that have really been pushing towards the idea of, instead of being afraid because we're going outside of those boundaries, it's more like you want to spend your time instead trying to push those boundaries and say, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to move beyond. So ninth house stuff I think is very important right now, because it's like, no, you need to be free. You need to be doing things on your own terms and not just, but this is how we've always done it. Or, well, this is my family, or this is what my family thinks, or this is what this one thinks. It's not about that. It's about what is it that you have to do, like, devoid of all of this other stuff. Okay? How do you break away from all of that other stuff? And I always focus on the masculine and feminine because I feel that the way in which we relate and which we connect not only to other individuals but to the group has a lot to do with how we make those life decisions, or what we feel our duties are, or what we feel our obligations are. And I'm not saying all of those assumptions may not be legit. I mean, yeah, there may be something where we feel a duty to someone and it's like, okay, well, that is probably the right thing to do. But, but again, there may be situations where we hang on to certain things and there's no reason for us to do that. So, yeah. So anyway, interesting message for today. One other quick thing I'm going to mention before I close today is I use these cards a lot, the Essential Oil Oracle. And what I found, I'm actually experimenting with using them like in horoscope spreads and stuff. And the results are really interesting. So I may actually start offering some readings with these. And let's see, well, I don't need 3. I just want the one for today. I love them. Yes, I love these cards too. And it's just, there's one I actually pull out because it says something about, I don't know, there's some wording on it that just makes me feel like it's spiritual shaming of some kind, so I always take that card out, but I use all the rest of them. So our card here is turmeric, and it is, the keyword is belief, and the trigger statement is it's too late. Interesting, it's too late. True statement, I'm free to believe, right? I'm free to believe, oh cool. I can add it to my mind, body, spirit, read choices. Yeah, this is Lisa Powers' Essential Oil Oracle cards. Let me show you the cover of it here. And I found this one when I was just looking for cards about essential oils, and I found this deck on Amazon. Okay, but the message here is you are clearing away beliefs, energy, and memories that no longer serve you, so the necessary decisions will be made. I mean, that's pretty much what I just said, right? I mean, it's, I don't know that I have anything to add to that, so, interesting. I do feel like that is what's going on right now. I do feel like there's a lot of stuff coming through that is trying to help us move on to whatever's next for us, you know, to move to whatever is, and to stop letting the past. I mean, again, it's not that we have to discard everything in the past, but at the same time, there's a lot there that we, you know, that doesn't need to be, repeated. You know, just because they did it before doesn't mean it's the right thing to do now. So, and again, especially in relationships, and that is one area, by the way, just that I see. Thank you, amazing as always. Oh, you're welcome. And yeah, I do see that though. Like when I look at Gen Z, I do see like a shift, and I think part of this, even the female empowerment thing, while I think some of it is still a little imbalanced, I do think nonetheless it represents the way in which we're trying to awkwardly shift our way of thinking about the soul and the soul image. And also, it's the idea of embracing the soul. That goes along with the idea that you have a right to enjoy and live your life the way you want to. And that there's no obligation that you're a terrible, sinful person and you should self-flagellate all the time and, you know, because you're unworthy and this and that. That's another thing too, but maybe that's a subject for a different day. Anyway, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great Thursday. We're getting towards the weekend, and I will be here tomorrow, and I'll talk then. Have a great rest of your day.